Welcome to another great show of the Business Talk Library on RETV. I'm excited to bring this episode because this was probably one of the earlier interviews that I did, and I will say it was a confidence booster, as well as some very solid insight that Marissa shared. Now, at the time when I was filming this, Marissa was just recognized as a 30 under 30 entrepreneur in Canada. I mean, doing great things with her business. And so I thought the insight that she shared was huge. And I'm not going to give any spoilers. We're just going to play it, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
I feel like I already went into one of them a little bit. I do think that it takes, 150% of dedication towards a business if you want to make it successful, and to really put everything you have into it. So, if you are side hustling, I do recommend just trying it. If you fail, you can always get a job. You can always, do something else. But if you never try, I think it's really difficult to kind of really know if it would have ever worked out. And then my second thing that I really live by is there is no such thing as luck. There's only hard work.
So there you have it, a great conversation for people to have. I mean, if you're going to be a business owner now, this is something that I think a lot of people go back and forth with is, and I'm just going to throw the question out so you and I can talk about this a little, is is it possible to build a solid business if you're side hustling, or do you need to go all in?
I think it depends. And the reason why I say it depends is because I think it depends on the amount of work you're willing to put in. Because building a business is already difficult as is. And one of the things for me that I've noticed is, at least personally for me, when you have a backup option, are you really going to go 101%? If you have a she said, Marissa said, put in 150%. When you have a backup option and a backup plan, and, you're working your full-time job or whatever, are you really going to put in everything that you can? Or is some of that going to be, are you going to keep pushing off maybe going full and starting the business that you want to start because you're trying to still work on, building the side hustle? So basically what I'm just saying is it going to take you longer than it would have if you just went all in and did only that?
I love my wife, but I think this is one where you and I will disagree on. I think maybe when I was working full time, I probably would have agreed with you. But now being, full on into the business, when I really start thinking about all of the things that are entailed, that comes with actually running a business, I have a completely different perspective on that, because I think there's only so much you can really do when you are side hustling it. And my opinion is, I think a lot of people who are using the side hustle approach, I think a lot of times they're able to get, the task of the job done. Let's say, if you do interior decorating, you're able to get the task of it done on a small scale. But I mean, if you're really going to run a business, to where you grow it to where, like I said, it finances your livelihood, you're going to have to spend a lot more time, whether it's marketing, a lot more time in branding, a lot more time in business development. And those are just things that I don't think you can fully do those things when it's just a side hustle.
And that's fair. And I wouldn't disagree with that. However, I do think it is wise. I personally would not recommend just quitting your job and leave. Now, okay, let me just play devil's advocate here. So if you're walking in a situation where you don't have a plan, you're just like, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to go start this business. I'm quitting my job today. I honestly don't think that's the most prudent option. I don't know Marissa's background and kind of what she did preparing herself, but for me, I think it is a much prudent decision for you to plan and build your way to starting your business than for you to just go on and be like, well, I'm going to quit my job today and I'm just going to go do this. I wouldn't do that personally. That's just my opinion and that's my perspective. I think it's prudent to even start to understand, like you said, I don't think you'll fully understand like what working in the business fully entails, but I think the amount of work that you kind of have the opportunity to put in while you're doing the side hustle will prepare you. I'm not saying it's going to be, you'll be ready to go if you transition and you'll be ready to just kick it in the butt or whatever. But what I am saying is I do think that working on your business while you're working a full-time job and side hustling definitely prepares you to be able to do that full-time. That's just what I'm saying.
I will say, I do think that is a risk-averse approach to take. And I think that that's probably advisable for a lot of people, because I mean, when I talk to people who want to start a business, one of the things that I notice for a lot of the people who say, hey, I would love to start a business, and you ask kind of, hey, what's your plan? And they're like, well, I'm not really sure. And I'm like, well, you're not ready to be a business owner. And no offense to them, but I mean, when it comes down to being a business owner, your job is to, guide the strategy. Like, you got to do the work, and you have to actually guide the strategy. And I think if a person's not used to having a plan when they have a day job, not having a day job is not going to make them get a plan.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I agree. I agree that, doing it as a side hustle for some period of time, if you're not a person who's ready to, step into what it entails to be a business owner, then yeah, side hustle it until you learn, what it takes, and then you can kind of make the leap.
And that's actually a really good point, because I do think and this is something that you've said, Terrell, before, is I think it's something that you said where is if you're a horrible employee or if you don't have the right mindset on your day job, do not expect to excel in your business. It's all about the mindset. How are you approaching this? How are you doing your day job? Right. And you can't, I think you said this, I think what you said was, you can't be a horrible performer during the day and be a rock star at night. It doesn't work, because that's going to carry through. So I think when it comes to the whole side hustle transition to working from working a full-time job, transitioning the side hustle to full-time, my thing is, I really think it comes down to the mindset. Because even when I think about myself, even now with the business we're doing and doing the Spanish podcast and working full-time, I could have done this a few years ago. Right. But to be honest, I really didn't have the discipline or even the work ethic to be able to do that. Because when you have a situation where you're trying to side hustle and you're only willing to put in hours that are convenient for you, I still want to live my best life, I still want to go do this, I still want to have my weekends, that's not realistic. And more all of my friends know that now. I was talking to one of my friends, she was I was telling her, I was man, I just feel I'm such a horrible friend. My weekends are for work. I'm working on the weekends. we're working on the show. And she was like, you know what? I really respect the fact that you're dedicated to it. And to be honest, a few years ago, I can't say that I was that dedicated, which is why I didn't see the results that I'm seeing now. So I really think it does come down to the mindset of are you willing to put in the work? And is this something that you want to where you're perfectly fine? Hey, this is what my weekends are going to look like at least for a few years until I kind of get it up to the point where I want it to be. And to be honest, this, I didn't start out being oh, I just live to work for the weekends. Oh, I love it. When we first started, I used to complain. I'm oh, I just feel my weekends are being taken over. I work Monday to Friday. I'm so tired. And then I have to come and edit videos and do podcasts and do all this stuff on the weekend. I want my life back. And I remember I complained about that for a year. But one of the things that I had to realize and even appreciate is this is something that we're building. And I think mindset is so key, because it's when you're willing to put 60, 70 hours into somebody else's business and you don't even want to put 30 into your own, there's a problem there. And I really think that's the mindset, because to your point, Terrell, I think you can do the side hustle for 5 years and, start your business. But if you don't have the right work ethic, regardless of whether you plunge into it completely, you quit your job and go straight into it and you're fully committed, or you go the side hustle route of then transitioning into the full-time business, you're not going to get the results that you are expecting or the results that you want, because your mindset and your work ethic isn't where it should be for you to see success in that area. So
No, I agree with that. I mean, I think that there is a lot to it. And I mean, now that you have scared everyone that's listening, um,
what? It's the truth. It is reality.
I would say, let's break it down from a standpoint, and I'll give my opinions as well on, okay, when it comes down to running a business, what does that really entail? Because I think sometimes people hear, hey, you got to be willing to, work until you drop or work until your eyes fall out or whatever. And I think sometimes people get afraid of that. And I don't think it's necessarily, hey, you need to work for the sake of working. It's, hey, this is what being in business really entails, and you got to figure out how to get all of these things done. Now, over time, you will get better, you will get more efficient. There are different tools that you can use, but in the beginning, it's going to be a lot because you're trying to wrap your mind around it all. So let's kind of unpack that. So when it comes down to, owning a business or being a business owner, what does that entail? Like,
that's a really good question. I would say, I guess I'll speak specifically for us, and you can feel free to chime in here. So I would say, from my point of view, which again, I had a challenge with this when we first started. I'm going to admit it. I'm going to say it. Terrell is the CEO of this business. Okay. There's no two CEOs. There's no three CEOs. Terrell is the CEO of all of our businesses. Okay. Let me just put that out there. And
I appreciate that.
Maybe we'll tell you a story about that later. But yeah, so Terrell's the CEO of the businesses that we have. I am the COO, so the Chief Operating Officer. Terrell really excels, and he has worked extremely hard when it comes to developing relationships. Really, what I guess you call the what would you call this, Terrell? Like going out and meeting people. I'm forgetting what that's
so business called. Development and sales.
Yes. So Terrell is really our business development and sales. Now, obviously, we have all of these engines like the shows and different things that we do that promote that kind of put our brand out there. But ultimately, a lot of the clientele that we've gotten has been because of Terrell's efforts of going out, meeting people, developing relationships, and establishing the great relationship and reputation that he has. Because let me tell you, people are not just going to trust you with their finances and accounting. Like, they have to actually trust and believe that you're a person of integrity. So I think I would say that that's one part, is the business development, which is an extremely important part of the business. And Terrell, I'll let you talk about that. And then maybe we can go to the second piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think on that first part, really, if without customers or without paying customers, you don't have a business. And, there's a lot of effort that goes into getting your product in front of the people who are looking to buy what you have, whether it's a service or whether it's a physical product. I mean, there's a lot of effort that goes into that, because I think that on the front end, you're trying to figure out what your message is. Then you're trying to figure out, how do I adjust my message to the right audience, or even trying to identify who is the right audience. And then I think it's just doing the work to get it out there, because I look at a lot of people on like social media, and they're like, you can use social media to generate clients. And I get those messages all the time from people that are like, hey, I got this new program that'll help you generate clients on automatic. And I'm like, man, get out of here with that. It's just like, I know for a fact it's not that easy. Now, there are some effective tools to use, but it really does come down to, especially like I said, depending on your type of business, it really does come down to, are you developing a valuable relationship with people enough that they want to buy your stuff? Now, if you're selling a product that's already popular, that people are familiar with, maybe not. So you don't have to do it as much as a service-based business, but you still do have to have some type of rapport with those people. I mean, because they're giving you their hard-earned money, like the money that they go work, 8, 7, 6, however many hours of a day that they go to work, they're giving you part of that money, which means they need to have some confidence in what they're going to get from you. If they're going to be able to, hand you the money for whatever your product or service is. So, but that takes a lot of work that I don't think people really understand how much work it takes to really get, paying customers.
I would say absolutely 100%, 1000% agree. And I really appreciate that that's something that you've kind of led the forefront on for our business, because I really think, and I was talking to an sales executive, I had him on the Charlando Negocio Spanish show this week, and he was just talking about what you said, Terrell, where like ultimately sales is about the relationship. Like you have to genuinely develop an authentic relationship with someone, and they have to know that you care. Like you just can't be coming here and try to sell something to somebody and you're not even genuine. You really can't, you don't really know what they want. And I think it's the same thing even with accounting and finance. With our business, we don't offer a cookie cutter solution to everyone. Yes, there's the basics, but then you also have to understand what this person as a business owner is looking for. And I think the same applies in any space and in any business. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is my favorite part, which is where the chief operating officer comes in. This is in basically making sure the background of the business is running as it should and things should be done. And to be honest with you, I probably struggled with this in the beginning because I tend to be, I don't even know if spontaneous is the right word, because, you know, Tor's going to call me out if this is not the truth or he doesn't interpret it as being so. But I would consider myself, I'm kind of like on the jump person. So I come up with an idea, I want to do it. I'm like, oh, let's try this. You know, next week I might have a different idea of how we should do it. And then I'll go, you know, design this whole template and do something different. And what we really found is we had to get better at developing processes, because what we found out is we would be spending time, you know, like for example, for the editing for the shows, is we would spend a lot of time initially editing those or whatever. And Terrell came in and was like, okay, we need, like I said, you know, being the CEO and everything, we need to cut in, this is taking you too long to edit, it's taking you too long to do this. Even when we started looking at work for our clients, even when we were looking at the properties, all of it is trying to understand, how do you develop a process that you can repeat over time? Because when you do that, then you can actually focus on adding value to your clients or adding value to like the tenants that are actually living in your house. So for example, one of the examples that I will use is, you know, when we were looking to lease our home, and not our home, but like one of our properties that we had, and we had a new tenant, I had all these great ideas of like, man, like we could come in, we could knock this wall down, we could change the carpet, you know, knock out, put new tiles in or whatever. And Terrell's looking at me like, you're not going to live here. Like, what are you doing? Like, let's just, you know, get the basics done enough for this to be, because the person that is looking for a house, they're willing to pay X for this unit. You increasing and doing all these upgrades and stuff isn't really going to increase. It may increase the value of the rental property, but again, based on where it is, probably not. But this is what that person is willing to pay. So you spending money on that is probably not as much value add. And what it allowed us to do when we just put in the basics was then to actually spend money on more important things that were critical to the space, whether it was upgrading the water heater or making our tenants more comfortable, spending money there. Whereas if we had spent money trying to make the place look appealing to the eyes or whatever, it probably wouldn't have been as much value add. So for me, I think my biggest takeaway, like, process is key. And I think process has really helped us streamline a lot of our processes in the business or a lot of the things we do in the business to make it easier for us to really then focus on like the value add things.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I think when it comes down to the business, that the process piece is one that a lot of people struggle with, because I think they look at the business as, hey, I get to do this, you know, this thing or this task, or even when I think about people who, you know, talk about opening a restaurant, they're like, oh, I love to cook. And it's just like, it's very different when you have to follow a recipe over and over and over again, because that's what people are ordering. Like, that's very different from cooking one meal at a time. And I think some people don't transition that, hey, I need to approach this in a process-oriented way, because you need to be able to deliver consistent quality in a repeatable way, because the more you sell, the more people expect to get the same quality product, and they expect consistent results. And I think the process is where that really comes into play. Yeah. And then the other thing that I think you mentioned about the back office stuff, I think that one definitely, a lot of people underestimate that. I mean, now that's one area where our business specializes in the accounting and the finance, helping people navigate that side, because, you know, if you don't get a handle on that side of it, I mean, you're not going to be in business long. I mean, if you run out of cash, I mean, you're literally bankrupt. I mean, that's just the definition of bankrupt, is
Yes.
you don't have cash.
Pretty much, yeah.
And so any other aspects of, running a business that you think that aren't so obvious to people?
I would just say pace yourself. Pace yourself. Don't try to do everything at once. I'm speaking from experience. Pace yourself, because that was exactly the reason why I would end up my entire weekends working, because I didn't pace myself. So pace yourself and take stuff one at a time. That would be my only recommendations. But enjoy the journey. That's the thing. I think I've learned I enjoy what I do now, and I don't complain on weekends because I actually enjoy what I do. And I think that makes a difference throughout any process. Yeah.
Yep. I do think that's another factor that I'll leave with it. I think, I think a lot of people that start a business don't realize that it is a journey. And just like any journey, I mean, I would compare it to a road trip. I mean, if you were driving from, Charlotte, North Carolina up to DC, I mean, it's going to be anywhere from 6 to 8 hours, depending on how fast or slow you drive.
Yeah.
And you can't look up an hour into the ride and be like, man, why aren't we there yet? It's just like, you know that there's a process. So I think when it comes down to being in business, like I said, back to that original question is, do you go in full time or can you do it part time? Now, I believe there's only so far you can get part time, but even when you go full time, it's just understanding that it's just part of a journey, and you're at that stage where you need to be more engaged, and that's what makes sense. Thank you for tuning into the Business Talk Library, aired on RETV. If you'd like to see more of the Business Talk Library, be sure to watch us every week on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m.